Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner U podcast. I am Paul Oneid, your host, and today I'm joined by one of my good friends, coach for Master Athletic Performance, Francesco Catalano. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, Paul. I'm happy to be back. I think this is the second time I've been on it. Second?
Yeah. You were on
Second
with
time.
Tony and I. So
That's right. So I'm really excited to be back. A lot of life changes happened since then. A lot of things to talk about.
a lot of things to talk about. I started the podcast again and I was like, okay, I'm going to make it super professional and we're going to have sponsors. And I was like, you know what? That's not really me. I'm going to sponsor my own podcast and I'm just going to interview my friends. And like for me, that was the biggest thing that I benefited from the podcast before, is just interviewing people that I respect in the industry. At the time, we weren't working together, so it was a great opportunity for me to get to know you. And I think it's with all the changes that have gone on in life, great time for you to be reintroduced, especially now as a part of the Master Athletic Performance team. And man, I was super stoked when you came on board, and I'm really excited for what's to come for both you, Master Athletic Performance, and everything that's going on with that. So maybe fill people in. What's been going on the last couple of years?
Well, I am now a father. I was a husband before when we last spoke. That was just in secret. My wife and I, Sarah, got married in Florida in secrecy because the pandemic was kind of keeping us apart. Because she's American, I'm Canadian, and the borders were closed. We didn't know how long it was going to be that we were going to be away from each other. So we decided, you know what, we love each other, and if things don't work out, we could always get divorced in secret too. Actually, I didn't tell her that. That was on my mind. But it's very nice to kind of have that kind of cop out or escape just in case. But we were both really confident, and we were trying for our now son Javi. A few months after she came into Canada, so it was very much like it was a real thing. We were super happy to make that move, and it really just showed how committed we were to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got pregnant pretty quickly, and that was during the pandemic. Still, things were super scary. Wherever you lean on the spectrum, it doesn't matter. You don't want your pregnant wife to get sick with anything, or your baby. So that was a really fun time. And during that time, we had moved into our home that I had already bought, which we were very fortunate to have the people that were renting it move out a little bit early when we found out we were expecting. And that's when we made ourselves a home gym and kind of made it like a little sanctuary where we didn't have to, if anything happened, or even like with our work from home situations, we don't have to leave the house. We could still train as much as we wanted. And, we'll talk about it a little bit later, I think, but that didn't really pan out. We're not training as frequently as we thought we would be, or training as hard, despite having the convenience and, the luxury of having a fully decked out gym.
Yeah.
Regardless of whatever you're training for, that's been the reality here.
It's funny you say that, because I put the home gym in during COVID as well. And it was like, okay, I'm going to be super excited about training. And I felt like I was just dragging ass trying to get down there. I ended up having to put this like, okay, I'm going to set my alarm because my desk is like 14 feet from the stairs. I'm going to leave the house, go for a walk, and then pretend that I'm going to a new place and just walk straight downstairs and start my workout. The convenience just wasn't, it was like, yeah, this is super convenient, but when you work from home, it's challenging.
Yeah, because at least for me, there's convenience, but as soon as you get in there, you're thinking about all the things that you could be doing inside, going back to work, finishing this, and you just get comfortable. You take longer in between sets. Your workouts tend to take a little bit longer because you're not motivated. You're not, trying to be courteous by letting the other person, just take the equipment or go home. Like when you're at the gym, you're there to work, but then you also want to go home, but you're already home. So there's definitely there's less of a fire under you if you don't have a goal. And I try to make up some goals for myself, and they come and go, and then I kind of just realize, I'm not complacent. I'm just content, and that's kind of where I've been for a long time. But like, the power lifter in me is always like, I need to get stronger. I need to do better. And I think a lot of that has to do with social media and like seeing everyone, at least the algorithm, making it seem like everyone that I know or people that I, respect are getting stronger and getting after it. When in reality, some of those people are also falling off or taking time off, but the algorithm continues to push you, those kinds of people. And then I just realized, you know what, I'm super content just kind of training the way that I want to train a couple times a week. And I'm happy. That's the big thing. So that kind of took a lot of pressure and guilt from getting into the home gym. I'm in there every single day, just not necessarily resistance training. We got a Nordic track bike that is the competitor to Peloton.
Mm-hmm.
And I am on that every morning at 5 a.m. for like 30, 40 minutes, catching up on my YouTube podcast, whatever, and just like really enjoying that. Yeah, a lot of the equipment doesn't always get touched.
Well, I told Liv, I was like, we have this home gym now. We want to move. And I'm like, if we move, we're not selling the equipment, because I want to keep the home gym so that when we have kids, even if it's just to go down there and mess around for a little bit, I need to have that space. And you mentioned something really interesting, and it resonated with me, seeing that I just recently decided to forego competitive powerlifting for at least the near and potentially near distant future, or forever. And I'm trying to figure out what fitness looks like for me. And it's the first time I haven't been following a program. It's the first time I've just been going in, and I have a general idea of what I want to train that day, but kind of doing whatever I feel called to do. And what I'm realizing is it really doesn't take the amount of complexity that we think it does to get, number one, get in a good workout and work hard. But number two, to actually make meaningful progress in the areas we want to make progress. Like my goals right now, I don't need to be 250 pounds anymore. So I'm going to try and lose some weight. Well, that also means I have the luxury of not forcing food down my face. And I'm learning how to eat according to my hunger levels. And Liv actually made fun of me yesterday because she ate more than me. And and it's just a really interesting change in dynamic. And I'm wondering if you went through a bit of like an identity crisis at all while you made the transition from competitive athlete to priority number one being dad.
No, I mean, I think I went through a couple identity crises throughout my powerlifting career. And I, just listening to other people in the industry and them talk about identity and self-acceptance has really helped shape the way that I think about myself. And I recently made a post, after not posting a lot recently, just kind of letting, people know where I'm at. And it's, I have learned that I'm not just a powerlifter. That's what people used to, when people ask me what I did or who I was, I would say proudly, I'm a powerlifter. And then they would ask, what is that? And I would have to explain, and they would, look at me all oddly, but like, I'm so much more than that. And like, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, a brother, a coach, a lot of things. This hobby doesn't define me. And while it brought me a lot of joy, and I owe a lot to the sport, to where I am today, all the opportunities that it's given me, it's not who I am. And kind of realizing that really helped me, put things into perspective. Like, I don't need to push myself as hard as I did to continue to get bigger numbers. And I never liked getting stronger because it just meant I had to work harder, and the numbers were always scarier. And just the potential risks for injury just kept going higher and higher. Not that I ever really got injured, but like, it's there. And I didn't like that, having to warm up. The training sessions get longer, and kind of what you were saying, like, it doesn't take a lot.
No.
I think the research is showing like you can get away with doing like 30% of the workload that you did to gain that muscle, to maintain it. And I've definitely seen that. I may have lost some muscle, but that's more so because, my workouts are essentially 30, 40 minutes long, and I'm not giving enough attention to body parts that otherwise, would be fine. Like arms, definitely a little bit smaller, shoulders too. Calves are probably smaller than they already were. Like, when I'm in there, I'm doing full body workouts.
Yeah.
Going to RP or RIR like 1 to 3, and doing like 3 to 4 sets, and then I'm doing supersets of opposing muscle groups, and I'm doing that, with the intention of getting in there 4 times a week, but sometimes it's only once or twice, and that's great. I understand the principles, and just enough about training to know, like, I don't need to kill myself in the gym or get in there with this high frequency or have this crazy program in there. I just need to go in there and be intentional when I'm in there. And that has given me all the relief in the world, and like just kept me from feeling this pressure and guilt to get in the gym, which has been so satisfying. Because
Yeah.
while training and fitness is still a priority of mine, the way that I approach that priority is very different.
Yeah, a lot of that resonates with me because like it got to a point for me essentially where the trade-off I would have to make to get stronger was that I wouldn't be able to train in a way that I found enjoyable and that my body didn't feel and move well at all anymore. And I very much value the fact that in a couple of years from now, I'm going to want to kneel down and play with my child on the floor. If you asked me to do that 3 weeks ago, no chance. And that's not something I'm willing to accept. And then the other part that really resonated with me is we deal with a lot of clients from different walks of life. And you've been a nutrition coach for how long now?
I want to say this is year 9 or year 10.
Yeah.
I have a hard time counting. Not that 10 is a big number, but all these years are kind of a blur to me at this point. But it's definitely 9 or 10.
A decade, around a decade of coaching, probably well over 1,000 clients.
Oh, thousands
of
yes.
Clients.
At least 2.
Like, I feel like it would be silly to think that your own personal journey hasn't impacted how you're able to empathize and help people. Like, you've been from high level competitor to guy training once or twice a week and everything in between. You've coached people in all walks of life through those things too. So tell me a little bit about how, you draw on your own personal experiences to help others.
I love that question. And it's really funny. Like, I think we all kind of go through phases where we look back at advice we'd given to people and we're like, man, that was not that it was like bad or dangerous advice, but like, that's not the advice you'd give now.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Like, what's a 21-year-old, 22-year-old giving advice to somebody, who has kids and can't really relate? Like, you can sympathize and try to put yourself in their shoes. And I definitely did a great job of that compared to other advice that I've heard from people. Like, just not really there are things that you just don't understand until you go through it yourself. And I'm not just talking about being, a father, but also like home ownership, having a wife and just kind of having a real career and having real responsibilities really change the way that you think, the way, how much energy you have, attention, just it's a lot changes as you change as a person. And the advice that I have given has been so much more relaxed than it was before, because I've also learned more research has come out, and just like the whole idea about just not everything needs to be so rigid or black and white or so quantitative has really opened my eyes to make me realize, like, hey, we don't need to be, in a deficit every single day. We don't need to meal prep every single day. We don't need to not eat out every single day. There's a lot of things where, I'm just like, hey, go out, go do the thing, go enjoy yourself. It's fine. Just asking people what their values are and, how that aligns with their goals. Like, they might want to lose weight, but their family is really important to them. And part of being a part of that family is having that meal out together or, enjoying that pizza together. So while, yeah, they want to lose weight, we also have to respect their value, letting them know, like, hey, we can do that, but having still some intention and mindfulness behind, their eating and what's going on there, instead of maybe in the past, it would have been like, oh, yeah, but you can track it. It's just in your macros. Just kind of find an entry on MyFitnessPal that's pretty similar and enter it in there. And it's probably going to be pretty close. Try to find one that's a little bit higher on the higher end. And of course, that's advice I would give to someone that, has different goals. But like, that was a goal. That was an example of a strategy that I would give pretty much every client, because that was just like IFYM or just like macro tracking, or just trying to, as a coach, like really believing, like, if I didn't have qualitative values, I couldn't help this person. I didn't know if we were making progress or not. Like, if you can't give me a ballpark of how much you're eating that day, like, I don't know if we were in a deficit for the week. And obviously I can't make a change, but like also I don't need to make a change to your calories, or I don't need to know exactly a ballpark. Like, let's have a conversation and you can walk me through what kind of decisions you were making and kind of go from there. And I can get an idea of how many calories you consume, but also it's not a numbers game as much as it was before. It's more of it's a, behaviors game. If I kind of rambled there, but I hope that all kind of
No,
makes
man,
sense.
that was phenomenal, because I'm finding myself like nodding, because as I've gotten deeper and deeper into coaching, I find myself leaning more and more on the qualitative information and like how the client is feeling, the decisions that they're making, their values, whether or not they're making conscious or unconscious choices. And the more I get into it, the better and better and better the results are with my clients, because it actually resonates with them. Not everything is about numbers. And in fact, I think in some cases, the less we lean on numbers, the better the results end up being, because that person is able to, I'll use the example of intuitive eating. Intuitive eating to me never made sense, because there's so many things in the environment that influence your intuition, whether it be the stress you have at work, whether it be the the ad campaigns that you're being subjected to on TV or on the internet. All of these things impact how hungry you are or how you think about food. But if you're already thinking about food and you're already thinking about your emotions, that in itself is teaching intuition. So the more I can lead my clients towards awareness over their moods, awareness over their hunger levels, awareness over their food choices, awareness over their own values, it becomes much easier for them to see where alignment exists, and then for me to lead them towards that alignment. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I stayed within the same constraints I used to. Man, the spreadsheets that I used to give people, it was like equation after like complex decision tree. And I want you to eat 5 more grams of carbs this week than last week. I'm like, looking back, I'm like, wow, why did people work with me?
Well, a lot of people appreciate and they look for that, and that helps them give them that extra edge in training. They feel like having those exact numbers and these exact prescriptions is what's giving giving them that edge. And that's where knowing your client and the tone and the approach you take is so important. Some people like the flexible approach, and some people want this rigid approach that may not be, optimal, but for that person, it is optimal because that's what they need, that's what they want, that's what they're used to, that's what they're seeking. Um, and I think it's so funny. Like when I see some macro prescriptions, they're ending in like 2s and 1s and 3s and 7s. I'm like, if it's not a 5 or a 0, you don't know what you're doing, and you're giving this client the false idea that these numbers are so precise and specific to them that they fail if they don't hit these numbers. Like the accuracy. I think people in this space kind of already know this, but like the time of season you get an apple will have different calories in it, depending on the soil. Like you can't be 100%. And that's why I think it's so important to get away from giving these exact prescriptions. There's a time and a place for it. But in reality, like most people don't need that unless like they really have the idea that they do. And you kind of have to play into that and hopefully, lead them to where they need to be eventually, which is, I don't like the term intuitive eating because it kind of has these false connotations around it. And like everybody's intuitive eating, and that's why they ended up working with us.
It's true.
But I like mindful eating, like eating with intention, having an understanding of like the principles and what your goals will help you, make better choices and intuitively with those things in mind. I have a client who is he works with a lot of clients. He's got to do a lot of meals out all the time. And some things that we had a really good conversation today, actually. And he was telling me he's like so proud of himself, and not necessarily because we've lost a lot of weight, but because of the choices he's making. And while they're good choices, it was the thinking that went behind it that was, so great. Like he had terrible meal options, but he understood that, being hungry is okay. He's not going to die.
Mhm.
body fat is stored energy. Um, that that he has control. He may not have control over the food choices, but he always has control over how much he can eat. What is being served in front of him. He has portion control. Um, he can control his portion control. So he had half a bagel. Oh,
You're good.
sorry, I was getting a call. I got to put myself on work or something. Focus.
Every time you make a thumbs up, there's like a thumbs up emoji that comes
It's
up.
very distracting.
I
I'm like,
know.
what is that? I'm gonna keep my thumbs down.
Put your hands in your pants.
Yeah. So yeah, he had a half a bagel, and he was like, he used the hunger scale that I provided with him. He's like, I know that I should stay between a 3 and a 5 if I want to lose body fat and stay in deficit. So although he doesn't have control over a lot of his meals, he just chooses to eat less at them, but still be very present and not make food the focus. And that is a way without being quantitative, still intuitive eating and kind of eating within your goals and your constraints. And that's the kind of habits and behaviors that I'm trying to instill into my clients, because we don't need to be in the same deficit every single day. We just need to be in a deficit. And if we're in a deficit most of the time, we're going to see, fat losses, which is the primary goal for most of my clients.
I love that. And I see it with a lot of the clients that I work with. And honestly, I almost feel myself or notice myself guiding some of my clients that are more type A, want that precision, almost away from that. And
I thrive on that.
I think it's fun.
Yeah.
To just blow people's minds about like, hey, that 5 extra grams of carbs they had yesterday didn't make or break your workout, buddy. In that same breath, talking about like, precision versus, intentional eating, and you've worked with the top caliber in terms of athletes. You've also worked with moms, dads, professionals. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit on the similarities and differences between the two, because it was the first time that I ever started thinking about this. I was talking with Trevor Cashy on our podcast, and he told me he's a little bit quirky. And I was like, yeah, what's the difference between training Gen Pop and training athletes? And he's like, everyone is Gen Pop, Paul. And he was saying it kind of to make sure that I knew the language that I was using, but I actually really enjoyed it because at the crux of it, all of our athletes are still people.
Yep.
But in terms of their needs and the variability of those needs and the specificity of those needs, what are some things that maybe you might do differently with a high level athlete, or what are some things you might make concessions on the other side of the spectrum?
So the similarities are, you're right, they are people. I have an Olympic weightlifter that is, he actually made Team USA. They're right now in Budapest competing, just to kind of get a little bit more experience under their belt before they have the big tournament next April. But one of the things that like she really needed was time away from being so calorie restricted, because in a calorie restricted sport, or weight sport, or just having to be limited to your weight class, it makes it really difficult to enjoy yourself, because you always have to maintain. And wrestlers tend to want to be, well, every weight sport, right, they want to be higher than they need to be, but that can be harder for people to do that, because they're gaining muscle, and also kind of like being so weight restricted, and the culture kind of drives people to eat more and eat more, and it makes it harder to lose that weight, or after gaining that weight back, or gaining more weight than they intended. And it's just one of the things that they really needed was time to be with their family, time to enjoy a family meal, have a meal with their husband, have an ice cream, that kind of thing. But, when we're getting closer to competitions, we understand like there are sacrifices that we need to make. We need to put our heads down and kind of just go after it. And it helps them, understand that, they have this long-term gratification goal, that they're working towards. It's, the big meet, big competition, whatever, and they're able to do that. And I think that is where a lot of Gen Pop people struggle with, is that they don't always have that end date. Now, not that that's a good thing either, because, once they get to that place, they don't know what to do. I need to lose 10 pounds. And then what? We get there,
Yeah.
nothing's changed. They're not any happier. They're just kind of, or like they are happy, but then they're just like, well, I don't know what to do with myself. Do I continue going to the gym? Do I still have to eat this way? They don't know. And unless you're having these conversations preemptively leading up to that point. But that is like the big difference between the two. Gen Pop, they live more in that place where they have those values that are really important to them, that don't necessarily mean rigidity and eating the same thing every single day and having that respect and understand that. Or athletes are okay with that, doing that for longer periods of time, but they still need to be able to just relax. And a lot of athletes can do that when they're early on in their career and say, I don't need any of that, but eventually they burn out, or
Yeah.
they look back and are like, man, I was such an asshole to my mom or my grandma or my girlfriend at the time, and while like they were okay with it, they really missed out on a lot of opportunities to make memories or make people happy, or make themselves happier. Because like a good example that I tell my clients is like, 2 years from now, next year, whatever, you're not going to look back on Christmas and be like, yes, I hit my numbers bang on, or I said no to everything, I'm so proud of myself. You're going to be really sad that you didn't get to enjoy yourself, or the meals that really bring you happiness and your family happiness that made those meals for you, kind of thing.
Dude, that's such an important and valuable lesson to learn. And I feel like I only learned that last year. So Olivia and I have been together over 2 years now. Our first 2 summers together, she was in prep, and then I was in prep the second year with her. So this is our first summer where we've actually been able to enjoy going out to eat in the summer, traveling and not bringing our meals, being able to indulge in treats and like do the things that couples do on dates. We're only doing now. And we came to realize after, we went through both of our preps and we did a phenomenal job of communicating with one another. And it was a great experience for both of us to do that. But we came away from it knowing that food is really important to us. It's a way that we bond together, and we need to figure out a way, even if it's that we prep our meals together and sit down at the dinner table at least once a week together to eat our meals. Food needs to be a part of our relationship. And I don't think people realize how big the impact of food is on relationships, social engagement, culture. And if we ignore that and you try to have this rigid approach, you're either going to alienate yourself from your friend group, or you're not going to feel like you're as engaged with them as you could be. It's a tough lesson to learn, but once you free it up and show people that, hey, like you can still go out and do all the things you want to do. And I think we run into it more so with those clients that work with other clients and have dinner appointments and things like that, and are quote unquote forced to eat out multiple times a week. Prioritizing the ones you really want to do. Like say one of those restaurants is one you really love. Maybe on the other ones you order a salad.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Like what are some strategies that you, like I know you're very creative with these, like what are some strategies that you use with clients who like to go out to eat but still want to hit their goals?
There are so many, and it really just depends on the person, their relationship, where they like to go. Some people just have to be able to concede and be like, I can't go to these places. Like I like to use the example of like a Mexican restaurant. Like if they're bringing you table nachos, either don't go because that's your pitfall, or tell them don't bring those there even though they're free. Or you go to an Italian place, if they're bringing you table bread, be prepared for that, because they're just gonna drop it off and walk away. And if it's in front of you, you're gonna have a hard time not eating it. And I know I'm definitely guilty of that. And I tell my clients this all the time, like I do those things, but I'm not trying to. Yeah, of course, I'm not trying to diet. I'm not. My goals are my goals, and I can get away with eating those things because I'm super active and I compensate in other ways. Like the next day, I'll probably eat less at breakfast, and that is exactly a strategy that I use. Like if you want to go out to eat and you didn't plan for it accordingly. And what I mean by that is like maybe you didn't eat less during the day. And I'm not talking about starving yourself, but intentionally choosing foods that are more satiating, but less energy dense, so that you do have more calories in the evening, whether you're tracking or not. If that is not something that you can do or didn't plan for, maybe the next day you just skip breakfast. It's likely that you're not going to be as hungry in the morning because you had a bigger dinner. Those meals tend to be higher in sodium, tend to be more calorie dense. So you're probably going to wake up, a little more bloated, a little bit less hungry. Use that to your advantage. Skip breakfast altogether. That's probably 400 or 500 calories out of your day. Then just move on. Go right to lunch. Or if you are hungry, have just a protein shake. That's probably going to be the better option if your goals are muscle gain and strength, because then you're still checking that protein bolus box off, which is really great. But some strategies that I really love using with my wife that work with, everybody is sharing an entree. My wife chooses the entree that she wants, and, I'm okay with. And then we end up just sharing that. We save, 30-40% of the bill that we otherwise would have gotten, because we still get an appetizer instead of 2 entrees. And then we just go, half and half or 60-40, whatever it looks like. We end up going half and half because while she thinks that I'm eating the same as her, I'm not, because I'm intentionally snacking throughout the day because I have a problem. So I'm still eating more calories, and that's why I am not, as small as her, eating the same foods as her and same meals and portion sizes. But sharing a meal really goes a long way. It'll help you save money, and you can both. It forces you to slow down and actually converse, because if you're going to sit down and order a meal and there's only one plate of food, you don't want to eat it within 5 minutes like you would at home during your normal pace, because then the whole date is over and it kind of feels like a waste of money. You sat down, you order this food, and then you're just walking out the door. So it does force you to sit down and converse. Another strategy I really like is called macro bunching. So it's either you pick a meal that's high in protein and either high in fat or carbohydrates. So instead of getting a meal that is high in everything, which is going to be a big calorie bomb, a good example of that's like a pizza or a pasta. Maybe you get a sandwich, cold mayonnaise kind of thing, or you get like a salmon dish kind of thing, high in fat, or steak in a salad kind of thing. And that way, when you cut out a complete macronutrient from your meal, it's likely that meal is not going to be super calorie dense. And then kind of realizing, I think talking to yourself too about like, not every meal has to be a big experience is going to be helpful too. Like the pleasure that you get from food lasts as long as it takes to chew and swallow the food. And we learned, if you pay attention, the satisfaction you get from eating goes down with every bite. So I like the example of a pizza. If you're really hungry, you could probably finish it, no problem, whatever. But the first 2 slices are probably going to be really good. Third slice is going to be okay. Fourth slice, it's fine, but you're not like as excited for it. But if you're sitting in front of it for a long time, you're just going to keep eating it. Or if you have this idea in your head that because you paid for it, you have to finish it, which I think is something that we're all kind of guilty of. We don't want to waste your money. So kind of having that conversation with yourself, like what is actually important to you, understanding, that the satisfaction just doesn't last, and being okay or not eating past the point of like the food's not enjoyable anymore. It's now like work. Those are just a couple of the strategies off the top of my head, and I'm kind of running out of breath. So I'm going to slow down and try to group and let you speak.
Oh, it's funny because like Liv and I will share entrees too, but we order 2.
Look, we ordered 2 proteins. That was the other one. So when we share the entrees, we ordered 2 of the proteins. So we'll get the extra chicken and the extra whatever, and then share whatever's tasty about it. Sometimes we'll get 2, but it's usually like one healthy one. Like we'll get the salad entree with the dressing on the side, and then get the actual entree that Sarah wants.
Liv and I do this thing where we order 3 things we want and we eat them all.
Okay, I haven't done that.
I wouldn't recommend it if you're dieting, but it's delicious. I think the take-home point from a lot of what you said is we all live in the real world. We all live in this environment that is geared towards consumption. It's geared towards indulgence. And to a large degree now, it's geared towards dopamine. And especially if we're dieting for fat loss, or even just trying to eat in a mindful way towards high performance in life and health, there's a lot of cues around us that will try to deviate us from that path. And you're giving a talk later this month at our summit on eating in the real world. I actually wanted to touch on how that pertains to the aging individual, because we talked about it briefly right before we started, and it really piqued my interest, because there are a lot of things I could do when I was 26 that I definitely cannot do right now. So how do you have those conversations?
So this is actually a topic that I've been going through a lot with my clients right now. Is they're kind of upset that they're not seeing the progress that they want, or they can't adhere to the plan that they've kind of created in their head. It's not something that I have told them that needs to be done, but they all have this idea. I think we all do, like, and I think school is kind of the reason for that. It's black and white. You pass or fail. You do well. You get A+, whatever. But there's a lot of gray area. We like black and white, but that's not how dieting works, or just health and fitness. There's a lot of gray in there, and we need to learn to live within the gray. But you can't live within the gray unless you understand the gray. So one of the things that I really focus on with my clients is education. Teaching them the principles, and guiding them in how to use those principles, or just apply those principles in everyday life. It's not as difficult as people think, but applying it is challenging, because they have habits, behaviors, and environments that make it really challenging. There's a quote that I really like, and I don't remember who said it. A famous bodybuilder. I think it was Brian Whitaker. I want to give credit where it's due. Optimizing constraints within the variables that you live within. And basically what that means is, like, what Paul was saying, like, what was optimal for when he was 26 is basically not optimal now, because he can't have those variables. So he needs to look at what his life constraints are now, and what he can do to optimize, those principles to get the most out of whatever his goals are. So for, like, a parent, that might be like, hey, I have to eat whatever my kid's eating because that's what they like, and I don't have time to make for myself. How can I make this better? If your kid's eating, I don't know, I can't really relate because my son's one and he's just eating whatever we're eating. But if they're only into French fries, terrible example, maybe you pair that with a protein shake. That's easy, super simple, convenient, whatever. You can't get in the gym 7 days a week. How many times can you get in the gym? A few times, or once or twice, and just kind of knowing what you have to do in the gym to make the most out of that time. So it's really just kind of understanding what you can do within your control without pushing yourself over the edge, like what's actually realistic, what you can keep up with, what is sustainable. I mentioned my client earlier, where he was eating, a bagel at breakfast, or half a bagel, because that's what was given to him at the client meal, or the meal with his family. And then later he just chose to eat, he went on this trip with his family and didn't bring anything with him because it was too much work to bring protein powder in his bag and deal with the TSA. And while people say, like, it's not that hard, he's not that committed, I really respected that, and I actually really appreciated that more than him going out of his way to do something that's not really sustainable, or that he'll do after working with me. But instead, he went in there with nothing and just made choices with whatever he had available to him. Meal one was half a bagel with coffee, and while it was a low protein meal, like a low protein day, a low protein couple days is not going to do anything to your progress or fat loss. It might actually help, because it's going to reduce your total calories for the day. And then meal two was like, just, there was chicken available, and then there was some sort of pasta dish, and he chose to just have a little bit of pasta. He told me he had like half a cup. He just eyeballed it, and then he had the rest was chicken. He's like, at this point, I can eyeball chicken. And he just had a lot of chicken, filled himself up. And then the next meal was pretty similar. He just had chicken and whatever, a small bit of the carb source that was available to him. And there was other choices there. He was at a family vacation. He was just like, these are my goals. This is what I'm going to do. This is totally fine. I'm okay. I'm not dying. I'm not starving. I'll be fine being a little bit hungry. That worked for him. That may not work for everybody, but just kind of understanding that you can make choices that are still in line with your goals, regardless of what situation you're in. There's always something that you can do, and whether that pushes you over the total calories that you need to lose weight for that, that day, you can make up for it later. For the following days, maybe reducing your carb or portion size of all your foods at one day, or over a couple of days. Like, just kind of understanding this principle, so you don't have to be, in a deficit every single day. You can adjust meals very
Yeah.
easily without really thinking about it, or putting real effort in there, and how to make food, substitutions, eating more energy or less energy dense foods and swapping those for, energy dense food. There's a lot, and I'm going to ramble.
Well,
and,
you can also just chalk that day up as I did my best, and I'm going to wake up tomorrow. I'm not going to try to make up for it. I'm just going to get back on the train and continue to make really good choices.
Absolutely. And I tell my clients, like, if it's not a pattern, if it's not an event that's going to happen every single day, like a birthday party,
Yeah.
if you're not going to be on vacation every day, it doesn't matter. It's not something we even have to talk about. We can just move on from it, because we're going to go back to your routine. If you're going to do this once every couple months or a couple weeks, and I'm not saying, go binge, or this is an excuse to go binge, but like, it's not something that we need to ever talk about or care about. Like, we don't need to give this a lot of attention. We're just going to go right back to what we were doing, and that's fine.
Yeah, totally. I think we also overblow, like, fat is really hard to gain. Like, I'm just gonna flat out, it's like, if you want to ballpark it, 3,500 calories of additional intake, that's a lot of food. And that has to be compounded for a while for you to actually gain fat tissue. I remember, like, when we went to New York, we basically ate whatever we wanted for 4 days. I came back the same weight. We stopped at 5 bakeries a day, but we also walked 20,000 steps a day. Right. So there's a give, there's a take. And what you said about, like, taking in the constraints and making the best decision available for you and being okay with that. I find a lot of the time we're limited by our expectations, and that really shapes how we perceive our effort or perceive the results that we may or may not be getting. So if my expectation is that I'm perfect, and my coach has set that expectation for me to be perfect and I'm not, I've failed. But if the expectation is that I just make the most out of the situation, make the best choice that I'm equipped to make, and then I just move on, well, then I've won. I've checked the box. And when we look at I always like to come back to the research, and I know you're the same. It's like, well, if self-efficacy is the biggest indicator of long-term success, which means how confident am I in my ability to follow the plan? Well, if every day I stack wins because my expectations are realistic, then I'm going to be sustainable in my results, and I'm going to be consistent in my approach. When the expectations are so high and so unrealistic, it just sets you up for failure. And that's why people end up jumping from one coach to another, or, yo-yo dieting and trying all these really unsustainable things. I would say for myself, what ends up being unsustainable for me is actually what I'm trying to do right now. It's listening to my hunger cues, because I work and I drink a lot of coffee and I exercise a lot. All these things reduce appetite. I wouldn't eat. So I actually have to plan my meals and space it out, because I do want to perform at a high level, and I know that'll eventually catch up to me. So I think the more we talk about how simple nutrition can actually be, makes people realize that while it might be challenging, it is realistic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think, well, it is realistic. There are still a lot of challenges that people
for sure.
like, that struggle with. Like, people have this idea of what they should eat and what is healthy, but eating that isn't enjoyable. They have this idea, just eating clean, and we all know what that means. It's nothing fun. They may not have, you know, just the cooking skills, or like the family that really supports them, or the time
That's
to
a
make
tough
those
one.
foods. right? There's a lot of things that can really get in the way that make it seem unrealistic. And while it is simple, like literally as simple as have 4 to 6 protein boluses a day, try to get a fistful of carbs at every meal, keep it moderate to be for most people. Your hand size for you uh, as an individual is going to be a good portion size for yourself based on your body size. Pretty much, and kind of trying to get like 3 to 4 servings of vegetables a day, including that at every single meal. Trying to get X amount of fiber, whatever. It's super simple, but putting that into practice it's challenging for a lot of people. It's time. And that's why I'm hoping to really show people how you can make it a part of your lifestyle without having to change a lot. Sometimes it's really as simple as have a protein shake, with this meal. Let's have a fruit at the end of this meal, and just making some simple changes like that. But I really like what you said about self-efficacy, because that's really the number one thing that I promote with my clients. And a lot of coaches, I think, are scared of that because it drives independence. And for them, independence means loss of income. They want people to stay with them forever. And that's why a lot of people use tricks like giving specific numbers or, in the past, you probably don't do this now because you said it, but like giving really complicated spreadsheets and asking people for a lot of things. Like, I'm not saying that's what you're doing before by any means, but like it gives people this false idea, like these metrics are so important and I can't do this on my own. And, then they kind of have this idea that they can't, that they're stuck, that, or like they don't know how to do this on their own. But for me, like, and I think for you too, like the best thing I can hear from a client is like, I don't need you anymore. Not that anyone's ever said those words to me. That would be very harsh. But, just hearing them say like, I can do this on my own. I'm very confident. I have the skills and just the know-how to do this. And it's not like they need all the knowledge that I have, but just enough to understand, like using their hunger cues, knowing what a meal looks like, how to navigate through every social situation. Like I really encourage people to go live their lives, go to the event, go do things. If you fuck up, great. And I want to know what you define for yourself as a fuck up so that we can talk about it and talk about how we can make things a little bit better the next time. Like if it was like standing by the snack table when you went to the party, maybe next time we just take a couple feet and we have a conversation elsewhere, kind of thing. Like let's talk about the challenges and the weaknesses that you had so we know how to better prepare ourselves for the next time. It's not bring your meal with you or make sure that you're super full before you go or just tell yourself you're gonna eat later. It's like, how can we still be normal and and still manage our calorie intake? And I don't know if I hope that whoever's listening to this can pick up, like, but there were very few times where I mentioned, numbers at these meals or asking for numbers. These are all, just qualitative things, not so much quantitative, that I'm seeking out at these events or when they go out to eat. Like, I could care less because they're all estimates anyways. Like, just let's have a conversation about it and try to manage it, because it's just, we can be in a deficit without tracking. And I try to use non-tracking methods with my clients as often as possible, because it shows them that there's a world where I'm not involved or where they don't need to track.
Yeah, I mean, when I get an email from a client that says, man, I am so happy with the results that I've gotten and I feel like I can do this on my own, that's chalk one in the win column for me. Yeah, I might not get that monthly income anymore, but I permanently impacted that person's life.
You did your job.
I did my job. Yeah. So we're coming close to the end, and I have a few quick hit questions for you. Some serious, some less so serious. The first question, who are the top 3 people in the industry that you feel have the most valuable things to say? Present company excluded.
Huh?
Present company excluded.
Dr. Eric Helms.
Okay.
He's one of the lead researchers over at Mass. Dr. Eric Trexler, he's also one of the guys over at Mass. And number 3, I think, would probably be right now Jackson Payos. I think he actually completed his doctorate too, so he's also a doctor. They put out the most, the cutting edge research on nutrition, sports performance, and just kind of very much fit my tone. And the way that I view the world and this critical thinking, put the person first approach, having conversations, thinking about what their life is like. That kind of view and thinking is what I really align with. So, applying the research as best as you can within the constraints of that person, having multiple conversations, and so that we can find something that works. Because while they're saying something, they may not actually mean what they're saying or actually want that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I've really learned from those people.
Love that. Do you crack your eggs on a flat surface or on the corner of the pan?
I tried the pan one time and it didn't go well, so always a flat surface.
Okay, good man.
Yeah.
If you could have 5 dinner guests, dead or alive, who would they be? Little pregnant pause.
Well, probably, I can't really think of anybody, but the people that come to mind are the Power Rangers. I was actually wearing the shirt this morning, and that's the first thing that came to mind. So let's get the original crew together and talk about some things. Not at their current age, but maybe while they were still teenagers as Power Rangers, not the actors.
That was nowhere near what I expected.
I don't know what you expected from me, but that's where my mind went.
Good for you. What is your favorite flavor of crispy mini?
Crispy mini?
Yeah, like rice cake.
What is it? Oh, rice cake. Like the chips or the actual rice cakes?
Oh, you're a rice cake guy. So rice cakes.
I actually have a bag here, which is kind of embarrassing because I don't normally. But white cheddar, and the reason for that is that they're not that great. So I can only eat one at like a time. If that's like a quick snack. If we're talking about the rice cake chip bags, it would be the cheddar. I crush a bag of those at least 3 times.
So good.
Yeah, they're like, I don't even care that they're not really low calorie, but in my mind I'm like, this is better than Doritos. And really they're not, at least in taste, but probably the same calories if you're looking at a similar bag. But yeah, I crush those, no problem.
No, they're not. Only for a full bag, like a full normal bag of crispy minis, it's 75 grams of carbs and 15 fats.
That's a lot of calories, and I honestly didn't even want to know the numbers. Well, so
there you go.
You put that in my mind, and now I don't want to eat them. I really like being ignorant.
Sorry. The last question. Who would you like to see on the podcast next? The caveat is you have to help me get them on.
Ooh. Probably Eric Helms, Eric Drexler, or Jackson Payos.
You can help me get them on the podcast?
I probably can. They're that hard to speak to. I've messaged them. I mean, they seem nice.
Okay, deal. We'll hold you to that.
They podcast all the time. They love podcasting.
Francesco, thank you so much for your time today. If people want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
They can find me on the Master Athletic website, which I'm sure you'll have links somewhere. Totally. Or my personal Instagram, @F_Catalano. Or if you like powerlifting and are in Canada or somewhere close to Canada, I am a meet director. I would love to have you. You can check us out at Catalano Events on Instagram. You can email me at Francesco at masterathleticperformance.com. Or is it masterathletic.com?
Masterathletic.com.
No, is it?
It's just masterathletic.com.
It auto-populates on my computer.
Boom. Thank you, everyone. Oh, I just knocked the camera. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This podcast obviously brought to you by Master Athletic Performance and Coaches Corner University. Visit www.masterathletic.com for all your coaching needs. Work with myself, Francesco, or any one of our team members, or www.coachescorneru.com. And if you are interested in our CEU approved course, the Foundations course, we are offering a 25% discount on that course right now with the code CSCSCEU. So visit www.coachescorneru.com to register for that. Chesco, thanks so much. I'll link everything in the show notes. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great.